Today is Saturday, April 26th, 2025. Welcome to the Survivor Fans Podcast. I'm Joanne.
And I'm Stacy.
And this is the listener feedback show for Survivor 48, Week 9.
Yes, an interesting turn of events in this week's episode. I am anxious to hear what everybody had to say about it, their thoughts, how they interpret it, and then obviously eager to hear what folks think may happen next.
Wow. There's only 4 more weeks.
Is that right? That doesn't sound right.
May 21st.
I guess that's right. Huh.
I think so, yeah.
It didn't sound right, but I think you're right.
Next Thursday is the 1st.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Well, we are getting down to the nitty gritty, and this should be an interesting week coming up. But before we head down that road, let's take a look back with the fellow superfans on what all happened and their interpretation of it all this past week. Do we have any business we need to cover before we crank it up?
I don't believe so, other than just an update on my niece. Yay, she's out of the ICU as of yesterday. And they've actually taken her over to the section of the hospital with rehab. So, yay.
Fantastic.
And she's eating again. So we're very, very happy.
Yes. Thanks for all the thoughts and the prayers and the good energy sent towards Jennifer. We appreciate that. Okay, first up, we got a call from Christiana.
Hi, Joanne and Stacy. This is Christiana from Massachusetts calling in with my feedback for this week's episode, courtesy of my spring break that allowed me to watch the episode on Thursday in the middle of the day. I am glad that David is gone. He has really turned me off in this portion of the season. I actually really liked him early on. I found him kind of endearing and sweet. His story, while being a little bit ridiculous, and I know people were clowning on him about, oh, I don't have a productive job and I want to have 4 kids with my girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I thought he seemed like a decent guy, but then in this strong-arming time of the game, that really turned me off. I don't particularly enjoy watching people play like that. And so I was fine with him leaving. And I actually was surprised that Joe and Eva got on board to vote against him and Mary as a unit. I thought that they were going to stay with him and Mary, but with Shahin, Kyle, Star, Mitch, and whoever the 5th person is, I can't think of them right now. They would have had 5-4, right? So they still could have gotten David out without Joe and Eva, but I'm glad that they did side with the majority, and I think that is promising for the future of their games. In regards to playing with integrity, the word of the season, actually the word of the season is milk, so maybe this is the secondary word of the season, but I think there's obviously more and less cruel ways to play Survivor, but I don't really think you can play with a ton of integrity. At somewhere along the way, you're going to be turning on someone. You have lied to someone. And I think that that's where I find the dynamics of the trust and the integrity and all of that, like, kind of fraudulent because, okay, well, they committed to each other, they being the Strong Alliance, that they were going to play honest and strong and win immunity challenges and blah, 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 which, side note, Camilla's whole thing about he just wants to be out here so he can win challenges against his other meatheads was A, funny, and B, honestly pretty accurate. He can go to a CrossFit gym and fulfill those dreams elsewhere. He doesn't need to be on Survivor to do that, but I digress. Anyway, why is it that, we have to be honest to each other, but I'm going to lie to someone else, and that's still playing an honest game? You all sat with Mitch at a reward. It's like, this is a human thing. He just needs this, full well knowing that the thought was maybe at some point you're going to vote him out. If you ask Mitch, I don't think you have a lot of integrity there. So is it only when you are explicitly stating loyalty to people, and then if you go against that loyalty, then that ruins your integrity? I don't know. The whole thing is kind of a flawed premise to me, so I don't really care that it's maybe now a wash. I thought Kyle did a good job cleaning up his game. And I hope that him and Camilla can keep doing their thing. But again, I don't know how much longer it can stay a true secret. If they can manage that, that's very impressive. Anyway, have a great week. Bye.
Thanks, Christiana.
I still think Joe choosing Mitch and Shahin to go with him to eat was a big to David.
Oh, because he said,
David's
I'll take you when I win.
I'll take you. Don't worry, Joe. I'll take you.
I'll get you fed, brother. Yeah. Yeah, I believe that's the case, too. And you could even hear it in David's exit interviews. His honesty and integrity was a sliding scale reserved for a group of few, the strong. And he was like, well, of course, at some point you'll have to, you'll have to deceive or whatever. Right. Yeah, that's the way it always is. That's why the people who lock onto that simpleton black and white path are frustrating to watch. He's right. Also, at the same time, if you could get a group of people, and they almost did it, to agree to play a certain way, it's regardless of the rules, whether it's coach going hyper-religious and having prayer circles and all those things to try to keep people together, or Boston Robs, don't let anyone be off alone.
Forbid them to be off alone.
Yeah, that kind of thing. When you can get a group, and it is possible, you do have personalities that can make that possible, at least to a degree. Coach had Sophie, a submersive element in the midst of that ranks, and here we've got Kyle and Camilla, even more formidable, undermining the strong shall survive and win alliance. Then well, my point was that it is possible to get to the end if you can get people to stick to that. But more times than not, it's just not going to happen, and you're going to get busted for it. Now, if you were to own it and go, yeah, I knew it was flawed, but it worked when I needed it to work. It held it. If you were to do something like that, you could come out ahead of it. But if you say these are the deserving people.
Unless people are feeling very resentful about it.
Yeah, well, and it will. It by its very definition, it will breed resentment in some group, the ones that are getting voted out, because they didn't deserve it by your definition. They didn't meet your criteria for what a good winner is. That's always the twist at the end, though. How do you get them to vote for you?
Right.
Good stuff. Thanks, Christiana. Next up, we got an email from Tara in New York. Hi, Joanna and Stacy and Survivor friends. Finally, I've been hoping we weren't going to end up with a strongman snooze fest, and thankfully the players delivered this week. Survivor is back and it's game on. I had Mary as my vote out in JSFL, but I've never been happier to be wrong. That does happen sometimes, for sure. David was fun to cheer against, but I'm glad to see him go. I loved some of the editing and photography choices this week. Shahin emerging as a shadowy figure behind Eva as she snuck out of camp felt like a scene from a horror movie. The switch from night vision to torchlight as Eva reached the scrolls was pretty cool too. Yeah, that with Shahin in the background was just that was a fantastic image. Yeah. I'm sure they were super thrilled to get that, and it very well could be the definition of foreshadowing. And even though it wasn't as cinematic, Star's swimming scene was wonderful. I've taught swimming in the past, and seeing her succeed as Mitch cheered her on really tugged at my heartstrings. I could watch full episodes of just Star, so I hope we see more of her in the coming weeks. There is an extra scene with her in it, and if you're feeling like you're missing some Star, definitely check out the deleted secret scenes. There'll be a link in the show notes.
It's pretty much all Star, just about.
Yes, it is all from her perspective. It's very good. Who's your final three? Star wants to know. Good stuff. As far as David, you both summed up my thoughts perfectly. I hate to say it, but his read on Kyle, Camilla, and Shahin was spot on. If only he looked at his own behavior as closely as theirs, he wouldn't be drinking milk with Cedric and Chrissy at Ponderosa. Judging by his exit press, he hasn't changed a bit either. Nope. In the Sunrise Beach scene, we see him say, "I'm going to take a back seat on this one," only to push for Camilla again in his next sentence. In his exit press, he starts out saying that he loves his castmates and then immediately slams almost all of them, even calling Joe a weak man and delusional. He goes on to say how Survivor isn't that hard. I need to mention how much I love Camilla here. She was fantastic calling David a horrible liar right to his face and had me cracking up in her confessional calling him an idiot. I have to agree. Moving on. I think Kyle and Shahin really excelled this week. Kyle rebounded from some of his awkwardness during last week's scramble really well. His conversation with Joe did seem a little out of context, but it worked, so he's doing something right. As far as Shahin, the montage showing him plant subtle seeds of doubt in regard to David was fantastic. It really stood out in contrast to David's bullish gameplay, and the way it was filmed reminded me a little of Operation Italy last season. Yeah, they did have some really good cuts. As for next week, the preview looks like we're in for some fun. Star says the big people are about to get ate by the piranhas, and I can't wait. Mary's an interesting player and still could be someone to watch. I'm not convinced she was ever truly hyped up on the Strong Alliance. After her horrible time at Vula, I think she just took advantage of her one way into the majority, which was David. Now that he's gone, I can see her completely changing course to work with Camilla, Mitch, and Star against the remnants of the Strong Alliance. If so, I think they'll target Joe and Eva. It will be interesting to see if it's difficult for Shahin and Kyle to disregard their loyalty to Joe. Also, Eva's arsenal will make any move against that pair extremely difficult, but I'm pulling for it. Whatever happens, I think we're finally going to see less muscle and more gameplay, which makes me very happy, and some real screen time for Star, Mary, and Mitch will make it even better. I can't wait to hear what the rest of the fans predict for next week because things might get crazy. As always, thanks for everything you do, Joanne and Stacy. I am so glad to hear that your niece is starting to recover and continue to pray that she is fully well soon.
Thank you.
Have a great week, everyone. Thanks, Tara. Good job. Yeah, David didn't waste any time disparaging Mary either. He said that she latched on to him. And it was, here's your honest and integrity check, too. He said when she was around, it was a strong 6, but when she wasn't around, it was back to the strong 5. Next up, we got a call from Robert.
Hey, Joanne and Stacy and Survivor fans. This is Robert from Canada calling in. I hope that everyone enjoyed this week's episode. I thought overall that it was pretty good. I was disappointed this week I didn't get a vote-off point. I thought David just seemed too obvious from the preview. I know it's not always the case where the obvious person doesn't go home, but anyway, I went with Mary this week, and it seemed like Mary might go home. Early in the episode, her name was being thrown out there, but things transitioned to David pretty quickly, and I think he sort of imploded his game. I think it seemed like even though he was right in some ways, I think he just showed a bit too much paranoia. And then I think the moment with Joe accusing him of going back on his word, I think that was the moment where David sealed his fate. And I think for me, that was probably my favorite moment of the episode. I just love the utter intensity with Joe, and you could tell that that was definitely a trigger for him, that he takes his words seriously. So that was the moment David's game was over with. It's hard to know how good of a move that was for the Strong Alliance going forward in the game, because I think David would have stayed loyal, at least to the members of his alliance that he views as the core members, especially Joe and Eva, I think, at least for now. But eventually, would Mary have convinced him to kind of split up Joe and Eva? It's hard to know because it didn't play out like that, but I think he would have been loyal probably to Joe to the very end, and I think that he's going to be pretty bitter that Joe voted him out of the game. I haven't watched any of his exit press, but I think if he thought Joe went back on his word there earlier, I imagine he thought Joe went back on his word voting him out of the game. Yep. So I think David might be pretty bitter, but Joe might not make it to the end anyway. Joe's ultimate goal isn't necessarily winning the $1 million. I think he would rather Eva win $1 million. He's said so himself. And I think if you had to bet between the two of them, if who's going to make it to the end of the game and win, you have to bet on Eva because Joe's going to do whatever he can do to propel her to get to that place. For Eva, I think actually this move was pretty impressive because it sure seemed like she wanted to stick with the Strong Alliance, and I think Eva likes staying with things that make her feel comfortable, and she was more than comfortable just sticking with the Strong Alliance, and so the fact that she was able to change her mind and vote out David is really impressive. And I think this was probably one of Eva's best episodes. I think her getting the advantage, going for the safety without power, that made a lot of sense, and I'm glad that she didn't risk trying to get a full idol, because at those odds it didn't make sense to do that. As far as my predictions next week, I think there is a good chance that people are going to start wanting to target Joe and Eva and splitting them up, but I don't really see it happening, especially with Eva's advantages. And so I think somebody more likely, probably Mary's going to go home, or it could even be Star. That's my current predictions for now, but I look forward to hearing all the other fans' feedback, and you guys just take care.
Thanks, Robert. David did say in his interviews, of course, he was all over the place, but he did say that at least Mary was loyal, and that loyalty could have become a factor later in the game, because he didn't get a sense that his original Strong Five alliance was loyal. So he didn't rule that out, that he could have stuck with her. Next up, we got an email from Mary in Maryland.
Well, hooray! I got my desired outcome this week. Unfortunately for JSFL, I always assume that what I want to happen is unlikely, so I didn't choose David as my vote out. Regardless, I'm happy with the result and am interested in seeing how the group dynamics change with David gone. His utter shock and disbelief that a strong, muscled player as himself could be voted out. It was delightful to watch. Telling Joe that he went back on his word was the death knell for David. I'm not one to read into the edit all the time, but this season feels a bit disjointed. In addition to having players like Star and Chrissy, and at times Mary, Camilla, and Mitch barely shown, I feel like we aren't seeing the tribe dynamics as a whole.
Yeah, they're definitely starting to hide more.
We get seemingly sudden relationships like Mary and David, and decisions about why a player was voted out with no explanation or follow-up. I don't feel like I have a good sense of the different connections happening between the players, other than Joe and Eva and Kyle and Camilla. I don't feel like the storytelling, Jeff's favorite term, is cohesive. I'm curious whether those outside of the Strong Alliance will band together and vote out Eva or Joe. I like everyone who's left and will be sorry to see any of them go. I wish we had the chance to get to know Star better. I know more about Shahin. I'm a huge fan of Kyle. I love his demeanor and story. I hope he does not continue to put himself too out there and become a target. Although in this season they don't seem to be voting targets out, so maybe he'll be fine. And the challenge, again, David's complete devastation and inability to compute that he could possibly not win a challenge was quite something. Ham and cheese wraps were an odd reward choice, not something I would have thought of as highly desirable, but I guess they'll take whatever food is offered.
You know what I thought? That's probably what was on the menu back at base camp that day.
Oh, I think I'll choose Joe for my vote out next week, based on the fantasy that those on the bottom will finally band together, turn the game upside down, and vote out a challenge and social threat. It's doubtful, but as good a guess as any. Have a great week, everyone, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing all of your feedback. All right, thanks, Mary.
Another thing David said in the interviews, that the reason that he stepped off was all of his years of training and playing football, because when you see the ball coming down, you want to catch it. And that's why he stepped off, was to catch it. So it wasn't really his fault. It was the years of training as a football player
I don't believe any of
that caught him up. Thanks, Mary.
He obviously slipped off and tried to go back on and have it not be anything. And Jeff said no.
Yeah.
But no, he failed forward, just like Kyle.
Well, it was his training, hon. You gotta give him his training.
Go have some chocolate milk.
Next up, we got a call from Rebecca.
Hi, Joanne and Stacy. This is Rebecca calling from Northern California. And I'm a little jet lagged, but happy to be home. I loved the episode. I had David as my vote out because, I really felt that after how hard he was pushing his agenda last week, they were going to cut him loose. And it's really funny because he keeps repeating still, as of yesterday, as I heard on the Rob Sesternino podcast, that he was playing that game of truth and integrity. But here's my question. Are you really full of integrity if you're being a frickin' bully? I don't think that's walking with integrity if you're pushing everybody around and trying to get your way and bringing people into the alliance and just saying, well, this is the way it is, Mary's with us now. And he was ruffling so many feathers. I don't think he should have been surprised to be voted out. I just think he lost his sense of his place in the game. And I think he got very self-inflated and felt that his way was more important, and it cost him in the end. Got his torch snuffed. I love the Eva, Joe, Shahin, Kyle dynamic. I love so much how they're playing. I really, in my fantasy of how this game would go, I would love if they would just pull Camilla in, and it would be Shahin, Joe, Kyle, Eva, and Camilla picking off the other three. I'm not sure what Mary's going to do now. She put all her eggs in the wrong basket. And here's a question about Mary. When did she go from being so laid back? I loved her at the beginning of the season. She was laid back. Whatever will be, will be. I'm having fun playing. To being so paranoid and so wound up and just following David's lead and being so pushy. I don't know where that came from, but it was very strange. Anyway, love the episode. Love that Eva got another advantage. I too would have stopped at 2. I loved that Joe won immunity. When David was like, hey, when I win, I'll take you with me, I probably would have dropped and just walked over and socked him and just been like, sit down and be quiet. I think David was showboating too much. Can't showboat on Survivor. You can't stick your neck out that far because your head's going to get chopped off. Anywho, great episode. I have no idea who's going to be the next to go. Maybe we'll have a great shakeup. Maybe Kamala and Kyle will turn on the strong alliance. Maybe they'll take out Joe, Shahin, and Eva. Who knows? It's going to be interesting, though. I was on the edge of my seat for last episode. I found it very entertaining. I'm really enjoying the season as a whole. I get to bike in Napa again tomorrow, which is going to be delightful. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you for everything. Bye-bye.
All right. Welcome home, Rebecca. Good job. Yeah, the other thing that David said was that people worried about jury management are the liars. He was out there being real. He was being authentic, his authentic self. And how could you hold that against him? Next up, we got... Next up, well, then you may not have any integrity or honesty. Next up, we got a call from Ryan.
Hello, Joanne and Stacy. This is Ryan from Central Iowa calling in. Question for you. Bringing back a challenge from previous seasons they no longer do. For me, I'm going to go with the challenge that they did for quite a while, where they bring the survivors in, usually once they're on kind of the jury stage, and they give them a test and they ask them questions about their tribe mates. And then the challenge is you have to answer, what do you think everyone else answered to those questions? And I loved it because it brought out kind of this, who's the most annoying? Who thinks they're in control of the game? Who thinks they have the best chance to win? And it was amazing because there's always this struggle and this tension in it. I remember season 12, Courtney was voted most annoying and she lost her mind and she just freaked out. So I want that to come back. So the question for you is, what would you bring back onto the episode? Eva, you were going to get in here and not tell anybody, and you told them. You broke it right away. I liked how she risked her advantage to move up one. I think I would have risked it one more time. Boy, having that a second immunity up to the final 5 would have been amazing and super helpful. David on edge, beginning of the episode. He just seems like he couldn't get out of his own way. Calling out Joe for something like that was such a bad move. Pressing it over and over. You went back on your word. Didn't like it. Love the Shahin flashback. Brilliant setup by Shahin. I wish they'd do these more often. Love the challenge. Bring back the counter. We want to know how much time has elapsed. Tribal council. Mary made a comment that I always think is really interesting. She said, sometimes you make a move thinking you need to make a move, and you really didn't need to make the move yet. This reminds me of Genevieve from the last season. Genevieve made a move because she was angry and upset. She voted out somebody in her alliance because she thought she had been blindsided and hurt, and it didn't need to be done, and I think it was a detriment to her game. Sometimes you don't need to make a move so soon. David, I kind of felt bad for him being blindsided. I do not think that he played a great game these last 2 episodes. I think he was just way too panicked, and Survivor 101, don't panic, stop, breathe, listen to someone else. David did say in an exit interview that Mary had kind of forced her way into the 5 to make it a strong 6. She was super clingy, and I can kind of see it looking back the last few episodes. I can see how it's almost like the Siler from Seinfeld, how she all of a sudden, boom, you just look over there and Mary's next to you. She kind of sidles up next to David a lot. I agree with you, Joanne and Stacy. They have to play better. When you're in the majority, you got to stop flaunting it. I think that's a big negative for David and for that strong 6, how they just kept flaunting and we're in charge, we have the power. And so they would just talk about their next moves openly all the time. What was a grade of this episode? Probably an A-. We got a blindside. Really look forward to the other Survivor fans. Have to say thank you so much, Joanne and Stacy.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. So we've talked about that too. That's one of the ones that we missed the most, the challenge where they do, it's essentially a pecking order to help you see how how your fellow castaways think about you. It's a perception check.
Or the ones where they, they have to answer something or do some type of small challenge, and then they break somebody's, so many times, and then they're out of the competition.
Yeah, I think that upset Probst when they engineered that one in San Juan del Sur. They just decided this is who's going to win, and he seemed to get pretty miffed by that. And I don't think we've seen it again since then. But yeah, the who's most likely to think they're the winner, and all those kind of questions that can reveal those orders amongst the remaining castaways are just fantastic. Is there anything else you can think of you'd like to see them bring back?
Not offhand.
The sumo challenge in the water is one of my favorites.
I always like that too. Yeah.
But that's now, according to Probst, that's too violent. They don't want that, and the potential for someone to get hurt.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, and they would get, I guess, random, but there would be some pretty big mismatches that would happen. Usually the bigger person would just take it easy, but you could certainly, you get 2 equal players going with equal intensity, and someone could get hurt with those waterlogged sumo cushions, huh? Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Next up, we got an email from Matt and Summer from East Tennessee. Hey, Joanna, Stacy, we're in Arizona at the Grand Canyon this week. It has been a bit hazy, but still spectacular. We enjoyed the episode as always, but honestly don't feel this season is as good as last. I'm with you on that. We are finding it a little difficult to find anyone to truly cheer for or equally important against. That said, the Strong Tribe exiting one of their own this week has added a little spice, and we're looking forward to seeing if it changes the game next week. Dave is a conundrum of an unlikable but insightful character. As a player, like some of the meals we've had in tourist spots this week, he was almost good. He had remarkable instincts about the secret power duo of Kyle and Camilla, but his aggressive communication could not convince any of his potential allies of this fact. He indicated in some post-game interviews that there was some sort of alliance developing between Camilla and Shahin as well, but the edit and Eva made that seem paranoid. Of course, pointing out facts to Joe about Joe's own actions was David's kiss of death. We've all had folks in our lives that have really good traits that they interpret as a pass for all their other actions, and we think Joe seems to fit this mold. As Stacy so aptly pointed out, trying to play Survivor as an angel or saint is a moral trap. If you want to win a game as an honest, nice person, Phil over at Amazing Race solicits contestants every week too. That's awesome. I like that. Summer and I are split on who to pick as the vote out. I think a smart play would be for the underdogs to team up in stealth mode and take out Joe. That would be 2 for 1 since it's hard to see Eva functioning without Joe. On the other hand, Summer thinks if the odd person out who just lost their power duo partner is the target, then Mary is the pick. And then Mitch and Star have no visible means of support right now either, barring an immunity challenge win. We will probably flip a coin again for our final selection. We'll be back home for next week's episode and can't wait to see our favorite show on a proper screen again. Thanks so much for all you do and can't wait to hear from the other super fans. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Summer. Next up, we got a call from Merek.
Hey, Joanne and Stacy. This is Merek from New York. I feel like I'm in confession. It's been about 10 years since my last feedback. Don't ask me why. Biggest problem is I don't often get the chance to see the show on Wednesday night, and so by the time I think of feedback, it's already too late. But moving forward. So, great episode. Really, Eva, she's not my USB because I'd already chosen somebody else, but she's probably my favorite player right now, and that was like the perfect Eva episode. She was given a lot of attention, given a lot of time on the screen. Her candids were great. She handled the advantage almost perfectly between sneaking off to go get it and then coming back and telling everyone first thing in the morning. She definitely won over Shahin doing that. How many players have we seen mess that up? And to be honest, even her choosing not to go for the immunity idol, if she'd gone for the immunity idol and lost the other advantage, then she'd have had nothing to show people like Shahin when she came back that she was actually telling the truth. A great job with that, and she's just showing that she just wants people to get along, but she can cut bait when needed, as she had to with David. She wasn't held up in shock that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So, on the other hand, David, well, this was the second week in a row where it was not his show, just raging verbal diarrhea. And of course, he lost Joe. He didn't realize it, but he'd lost Joe for all time when he said, you went back on your word. In Joe's mind, he didn't. I could see where David came up with that, but I can also see Joe's thought of, no, we as a group decided this. One thing I'm surprised is when he lost on the individual immunity, nobody mentioned that, hey guys, this might be our only chance to get David out, unless, that scene was cut and we weren't allowed to see it. Camilla, we didn't get to see much of her this week, but again, she's keeping her mental game really high. Kyle, on the other hand, the second week where even though he recovered, he's not the same level of player that Camilla is. I don't think he handled that anywhere near as well as Camilla might have. He's definitely not the brains of that alliance. Now, that said, if that alliance is smart, this will be the week that they announce their alliance to the rest of the tribe, after tribal council, of course. Between Camilla, Mary, Star, and Mitch, it's 4-4, but Kyle's one of the strong 4. And if he truly is with Camilla, it'll be 5 versus 3. Again, I think this is the week that they've got to do it, and then just deal with the consequences after that. Probably be either Joe or Shahin going out this week, depending on who gets the immunity idol, or if some disaster happens, or Eva decides not to play something. I mean, if they're able to keep it secret until tribal council, because obviously if they find out between Eva's immunity idol and her advantage, they ought to be able to weather whatever they come up with. But if they can keep it a secret, they could be in trouble. So anyway, glad I could finally get around to leaving feedback. And again, I've been watching the show the last 10 years and listening to your podcast and enjoying it all and enjoying everybody's feedback and all that. Just somehow I just couldn't get my act together. So we'll see. Will it be another 10 years? Looking forward to this week. Bye.
Thanks, Merek. Merek, I went back and looked, and he first started sending feedback back in 2010, I think, and he was always late. He would send it like the day after we did the listener feedback show. So he's like, well, I guess this is just for you two again. And he did that multiple times. So that's quite the stint. So here's your penance, Merek. Say 5 Hail Marys. Get it, Mary? Huh? Hail Mary?
Stinker.
Okay. Thanks, Merek. Next up, we got a call from Drew.
Hey, Joanne and Stacey. Hey, everyone. This is Drew. I finished watching the episode about 30 seconds ago. It's Friday night. Watched it with the kids. And first thing, I'm going to have to start laying down some ground rules for watching Survivor because the giggling, the I don't know. If you have kids that age, it's like they're constantly rolling around on the floor in circles or running around or climbing up on the walls and stuff. Listen, I can't even hear what's going on. So I get so excited. I'm going to be brief because if I get going, I'm going to be kind of negative. I did not like this episode. I'm really mad about what happened. I think I don't think I have David safe. I didn't think he was going to win. I think I had a 4-point week again. But I'm just, first of all, Josh Joe, I thought you said you were incapable of going back on your word. Is that not what you said halfway through this episode? I think that they're all bagging on David because of his arrogance and being pushy, but look in the mirror. I don't know. I think that I kind of think the edit is submarining David, and I think it's not fair. And forget it. I'm Team David all the way. I at this point, I want every single one of the Strong Alliance to get picked off. I think that he saw what was coming, and he tried to stop them, and of course he saw through Kyle, because Kyle is terrible at trying to hide. That was the main feedback I had last week. I didn't have a chance to call in, but he didn't even have the slightest alibi of why he didn't want to blow out Camilla. It was terrible, terrible alliance hiding, and everyone could see it. I don't like Camilla. I don't like Kyle. I don't like Joe anymore. I don't like even because I think I don't even really like Mitch anymore because he's just kind of called coattail riding, I think. I don't know. I want Star to win. I want Mary to win. At this point, who else even is there? I don't know. I'm pretty upset about Joe because I think he's a poser, and I think he's one of those dudes that like talks big, like, oh, honor, integrity, blah blah blah. Dude, you turned around and stabbed your guy in the back in the first possible second. Don't even miss me with that, as the kids say. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Team David, I'll die on that hill, and I want Star to win, even though I think she's kind of silly, and I'm just, how are you here? No, but I liked it because she's also calling people out. She just makes moves that are kind of impulsive. I think that's kind of refreshing. I think David's attitude was good in his final words. Yeah, he won't be back, I don't think, but I would love to see him again. All right, everyone have a good weekend. Bye.
Thanks, Drew. Well, I think it was like 2 or 3 seasons ago, Drew said, he had a hot take. He said, I actually want the Mactors back. I want the people who don't know the game. And he got that 100%. I can see why he's so pro David, because here's a guy who didn't even know Prope's name. He had been selected for the show and didn't know his name. Couldn't remember it. So that's how deep David was into it. But he fits that mold.
Definitely a poser.
Certainly Drew saying Joe's a poser, not David.
No, I know, but I meant poser in the sense.
The literal sense. Yes.
The literal sense.
Pretty privileged David. Well, you certainly got your wish, and he's delivered on the TV moments for sure. So there is some benefit to choosing the people who are bent on speaking their mind, and they should be upheld for that very principle.
And you still get to see him on the jury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's going to bring the bitter, from the jury bench. He'll probably still pose from the jury bench.
I would imagine.
Yeah, he'll find some reason to flex over there. Thanks, Drew. Good job. Next up, got an email from Jack in California.
The last few episodes were pretty good. I have been enjoying watching the Strong Person Alliance, staying strong until this past episode. Going back a few weeks, I like how Joe was thinking and watching who was teaming up in pairs for the challenge and his observation behind that. I think the most recent journey that was taken by Mitch, Camilla, Star, and Shahin was a bit uneventful in the way of chance, and Star having lost her vote because of it. I think Chrissy sealed her fate last week by talking too much at Tribal. As for this week's episode, David was pushing and playing a bit too hard in trying to get Camilla out of the game. I was impressed with the story that Kyle shared about his life and the struggles he has had growing up. I do think the secret alliance of Kyle and Camilla is still quite strong, and I don't see them turning on each other. He even shared with Camilla the information of Eva's new advantage. Speaking of which, Eva's advantage is one of the classics, and I can see her using it well if she sees the need to use it to save herself. But she did get caught sneaking out to gain said advantage by Shahin, and that could be problematic for her. Luckily, she did tell her alliance members about the journey and what she had to do to gain the safety without power advantage. There was a nice moment between Mitch and Star in the way Mitch was helping her learn how to swim and seeing her go out there and try. I'm kind of glad to see David go with the chaos he's been causing, but with him gone, the Strong Alliance may be on its way to extinction. And how many players are left in the preview we have received for next time? I don't know who may go out next, but it could possibly be Joe. I hope not, though, since I do like him. But for the underdogs, this could be a good move if they can keep it silent.
Mm-hmm.
I can see Kyle taking over the game and winning it at this point with how he's been playing. All right, thanks, Jack. Up next, we have a call from David.
Hey, Joanne and Stacy, it's David in Pittsburgh. Well, that episode didn't go the way I expected. I really thought it was Mitch's swan song, and all the signs pointing to David being eliminated I thought were just red herrings. But boy, David misplayed so much in this episode, going to Joe and saying that he was disappointed in Joe. And David really was getting on my nerves the way he was getting on the cast nerves. All the preening and the going around and talking about his body. But still, he was very entertaining. I didn't think he was going to win the game, but I thought he was going to go a little bit farther. By the way, I love how Mary, who survived her own tribe's demolition, now suddenly has become Lady Macbeth, and she's behind David. You should have won, and this was yours to win, and it wasn't fair, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. So now, Mary, what are you going to do? I'm always interested in seeing who's playing to win and who's playing not to be eliminated, and I put them into two separate categories. And now that we're down to 8, from what we've seen, it's clear that Kyle, Camilla, and Shahin are playing to win, and playing to not be eliminated are Mitch and Star. And for Mitch, I just don't think he's ever gotten a strong footing in the game. But that leaves the 3 in between, Joe and Eva. I'm not sure where they actually fit in. I know they're playing their game, their own game, but I don't understand where they think it's going to take them. Eventually, if they intend to be in the final 3, those two together, I'm not seeing the moves that they're making in getting anybody out. And I see the game Mary is playing, but right now with her number 1 out, I don't know where she's going to go unless the 5 on the bottom come together and get rid of the 3 at the top, whoever the 3 are. The one thing I really loved about this episode was the talk between Kyle and Joe going over backstories. I think Kyle does seem sincere. I'm just not seeing what he's going to do as he gets closer to the end. Is he going to betray Joe and Eva in some way, or is he going to go with them? But at that moment, I think he was really being sincere with Joe. That's all I have to say for this week. Talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks, David. Yeah, that is interesting to think about. I'm not sure how he fares against Joe and Eva in a final 3. He would have a lot of the backstory of the alternative things he was doing, and you got to have a jury that'll value that, obviously. Yeah, definitely something to mull over. Thanks again, David. Next up, we got a call from Parker.
Hey, it's Parker from Indiana, and you know what? I feel very justified in my take from last week with this week's episode, because I felt like I was the only person who was actually positive on last week's episode. I saw so much criticism online. Everybody was, man, this season is shaping up to be very toxic, very boring, all this stuff. And I was like, don't you guys see? David's not going to get his way. It's going to blow up in his face. Don't you see where this is going? And then I started second guessing myself. Wait, oh no. Is it just going to be boring and be Star and Mitch going home next week? Oh no. Are they right? Are the naysayers right? But I stuck to my guns. I had David as my vote off. Now, I didn't put Mitch safe just in case. But I had David as my vote off, and it worked out. Just a satisfying episode. Everything played perfectly. That challenge, my family just erupted when David stepped off and Joe won, because most of us had picked David as our vote-off point. And so we were watching, come on. Joe's just teetering on the edge for so long. And then finally David slips up, but then Joe slips more, and you're like, oh no. And then he steps off, and we went crazy. It was like we were watching the Super Bowl or something. But it was fun. But no, and then this one again was very complex, and I was starting to doubt. I was it's just gonna be straightforward. It's gonna be Mitch's vote. Eva's not gonna waver here. I'm sure that Joe had talked to her about the fact that David said he went back on his word and that really hurt him and stuff like that. But I don't see Joe being someone that's just going to push Eva toward a vote. I think he really did just let her make a decision there. And I'm sure they talked it out a bit more than what we saw. Heading into Tribal, I was a little worried that she wouldn't want to get David out and it was just going to be Mitch because Joe wouldn't flip on Eva. I was a little scared about that. And as the votes were coming, we were like, oh my gosh, is it actually going to happen? And it did. And it was incredible. Now, I'm not a David hater. I think he was an entertaining presence on this season. To me, I know a lot of people got very sick of him. And towards the end, I agree. He got a little much, but I think overall it was good to have a villain for the beginning of this merge because Sage just gets voted out right away. So then David's the next adversary that we need to get out. And now at the final 8, there's more options for people. There's more ways to go. I'm excited to see what happens. I know a lot of people are saying that this was actually a bad move for Eva and Joe, and maybe it was, or maybe they can kind of regroup a little bit and have an alliance that feels less like a dictatorship to some people that will actually want to work with them now. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening there. But again, very, very fun episode, and I was right. So, but yeah, that's all I got. We'll see you all next time.
All right, thanks, Parker. Man, I think you
and 134 or so people else.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I think you outed yourself as being a little behind listening to the podcast because on the whole, it was extremely positive on the listener feedback show. I think you got caught in one of those Survivor subreddit spirals. Those things can go crazy negative sometimes. Thanks, Parker. Next up, we got an email from Crystal from Santa Rosa, California. It was a dark, cold, and gloomy night in Santa Rosa. I made some hot cocoa and bid farewell to David. Yay! I got a vote-out point for the first time playing with you guys. Congrats, Crystal. How exciting. My new strategy will be to do some kind of quirky gesture regarding my vote-off pick's personality, and that will make it come true. We shall see. David wasn't wrong. He just had very poor delivery of his hunches. Paranoia will destroy you, as we are told. He was so very hurt, and I do predict a bitter juror. He might just stare and say nothing. I think he suffered life losses, but competition ones are probably not on the list. Dropping that ball left him dumbfounded. While I think most survivors are utterly shocked when they win, not so for dear David, and boy, did it show. I agree with you both that Chrissy and Cedric will meet him at Ponderosa with a glass of chocolate milk. We're now at the point in the game where Eva will start to suffer not understanding deception type strategy, and it breaks my heart. The fact that she has an idol and advantage will definitely benefit her, but my prediction is that she will use her idol to protect Joe. We will all cry when that happens at Tribal Council, even Probst. It will make the next Tribal Council even more exciting when she uses the safety without power advantage for herself, but then it's over. She will go before Final Four unless Joe gets an idol. Jeez, could get ridiculous. Mary, your only chance now is to get on bended knee and pledge loyalty to Shahin, Kyle, and Camilla. I may have to click the vote off button for her, and she's my USB. Is that allowed? Oh, you bet. It's happened to many of us. The beach interaction with Kyle and Joe was odd. Editing issue? And Joe, when someone tells you they were visited by their professor in jail to take an oral exam, the next thing you ask is, what did you study? It's a good point. My sense is that this was during his undergrad time rather than law school, but still. No, I think it was during law school, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe I just assumed that. I can't remember everyone who had Mitch's name in their mouth, but my protection blanket worked again. He looked tired, so here's hoping the reward food fixed that. It's time for him to stop being nice to everyone. Sorry, Star. Learn how to swim at the Y and not with private coach Mitch. However, what do you think about him recruiting Star and Mary to try a coup against the rest? It would give him cred for the final and allow the nice guy mask to fall. This makes him stand out as a strategic player that isn't just relying on his backstory to win. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll wait to hear what everyone else's thoughts are before picking my next casualty. Mary, please beg and then go talk to Mitch. Cheers. Cheers, Crystal. Good job. Enjoyed that. Next up, we've got a call from Shahin.
Hi, John, Stacey, all 5 fans. Hope everyone's well and safe. Didn't put anything through last week because last week was just not a very clean product for me. I think everyone talked about it enough. I think the linking to Ava's reward and how she kind of got 2 rewards, if you think about it, from winning the Immunity Idol that week and then getting this clearly, getting the note, leading to her getting this advantage, if you will. And I just don't like how sometimes they have to involve themselves in production. And I thought this week, again, production did a few strange things. I think Mary and David edit together as a focus, where if you actually look at the David interview, he said that Mary was clearly just the last person of the rung of that relationship. Yet what we were shown was that there was a strong friendship between David and Mary. But he says that's to the contrary. So I'm really struggling to see why they were trying to showcase that. Was it to showcase what Mary's trying to do and maybe less so on David? Because maybe my thought has been, why was Mary trying to attach herself just through David? Was David the weak point of that tribe and she thought that was her entry point? Because if that was the case, I think it was a poor plot from Mary to try that. I give her plaudits for trying to weave herself in, but she just didn't look very good and very clean in trying to ingratiate herself into that group. And it's, again, very clear that she's on the outer, so she's going to have to work something out. I do think that this was finally what would cause the split. I think it's all going to be like Bedlam. And I really did enjoy David's interview as a whole. He was able to say that, yeah, my edit was not very kind on me. He came out of it really well. He, again, left that relationship. The girl left him, but it was a blessing in disguise. He's got a new job, he's got a new partner, so that's great for him. And look, as much as he had that bravado, it's always put on. It's someone compensating for something, and all we can do is just help and support them and wish the best for him. In the case of David, I'm sure, again, he's a great guy. Yes, he's got some sort of bravado, but that's something there that he's trying to hide, and that's always the case, I feel. I think we're going to get a really good jury. And this is where I really, really hate how they've got rid of those Ponderosa videos. This would have been a perfect season for it. I would have loved to have seen everyone's takes, everyone's conversations. Just those 3-4 minute Ponderosa interviews were just perfect back in the day. And I feel like this jury was so diverse, I think, that by the end, I think we would see a wonderful blend. Thanks for all that you do. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, Shahin. There are still Ponderosa videos. They film them themselves, like with a phone.
They don't say much.
Yeah, they're not very long,
not
and
like the old ones.
They're not. Yeah, it's not like a celebration of that person when someone else was shooting it and editing it together.
That's what I'd like to see come back.
Yes. Yeah, the little short 3-minute things with that person talking at Ponderosa they tend to be a bit content free, like you were talking about.
Shahin said that David had a new partner.
Yes, yeah, he said, as you might surmise,
Is it Mary?
He wasn't very kind to Mary in his interviews.
Oh.
He said, as you might surmise, when I got back and I returned as not the winner, she left me again. But that's when he said that was a blessing in disguise. His girlfriend left because he didn't return with the $1 million. And he's moved to, I think he said Ohio, and he's piloting a jump plane at a skydiving establishment. And they've even provided housing for him. And he's got a new partner that he met. And he said he's very blessed and all these good things coming his way in that regard. So those pros. But yeah, he didn't paint Mary in a positive picture at all.
Or his ex-girlfriend, for that matter.
Oh, no. She left him. You can imagine someone with David's ego is not going to...
Yeah, but he said, even during the show, she'd already left him.
He also commented on that. In that bit of editing, he said, "Yeah, I did talk about when we broke up at one point, but the way they showed it, sounded like I had two different stories. Like I was still with her, but he said they had gotten back together after they had broken up that one time." And they were together before he went out there. And Shahin was talking about that connection with Mary. And I just thought it got established when they were shuffled, when the tribes were shuffled. And she ended up on that tribe with him. And she was very impressed with his protective instincts. And so I think they developed a pretty good connection back during that time on New Lagi.
Yeah.
That's how, at least it was portrayed, and there was extra videos where you could see her sort of celebrating David.
Well, but
seemed like she might have been crushing on him a little.
Even if she left David and his heart was bruised.
I'm talking about Mary and the.
I know what
you're back to talking about his partner that left.
His partner.
Okay.
My feeling is, if you really love her, you don't want to trash her. I mean, yes, she moved on. You know, you're hurt, but that's what she thought was best for her. Don't you still wish them well if you really cared about them?
I think you mixed those two up. I said he wasn't kind when he was talking about Mary. He didn't necessarily say anything bad about his ex, other than he was better off for it.
Oh, okay. So he wasn't being negative about his ex.
Not necessarily. I guess that's all in how you choose to perceive it. But he was saying, I got somebody new and I'm better off, and I'm glad that my ex ended our relationship. Was
perfect.
Effectively what he was saying. Good deal. Thanks, Shahin. Next up, we got a call from Brandyn.
Hey there, Joanne and Stacy. Brandyn from Indiana here with my feedback on the latest episode of Survivor. I know I've missed a few weeks, but I have been keeping up with JSFL, which is an accomplishment compared to last season. I got my first 7-point week on the double elimination week, which was awesome. It was also my first vote out points for the year, I believe. And then I just got David correct as well, which made me extremely happy. And then I realized that I've been holding off on some of these players for way too long when the finale is going to be at 5. And I'm just like, oh man, we're closer than I thought. I probably could have used some points on maybe a Camilla or a Kyle that I thought was going to keep going. And so I had to keep my pocket ready to go for those late games. As far as the episode goes, while I did enjoy the Shahin emerging from the dark following Eva, that was cool. I'm curious if there was some producer influence there as far as him not continuing to follow her. I know also maybe that puts a target on his back if he were to do that, but at the same time, it seems odd to notice that she's leaving and not go a little bit further than just the edge of the fire to see what's going on. And then to take that information to the one man who said basically that he's willing to throw his game away for her was wild. And obviously it didn't really matter. She told Shahin about it the next day, but I just found it kind of odd. I thought it felt a lot like maybe there was a limit to where maybe he did follow her and producer had to stop and be like, no, she's now officially on a journey, or she's officially on a challenge of some sort. Because I would have loved to have seen the scene where he's in the bushes watching her in the torch area and kind of seeing what's going on. That would have been awesome. But otherwise, I thought the episode was kind of a slog for me to get through. A lot of beach time early on that just felt like, what does this matter? We haven't even got to the immunity. We don't even know who's going to be available. But we're going to sit here and talk for a while. And it was a little bit, I don't know. I found myself a little annoyed with this episode. I try not to be too much of a downer, but this one definitely took it out on me where I was just, there was multiple points where I was just like, what are we doing here? How have we not got to the immunity challenge yet? How have we not gotten to this point? And also, ham and cheese wraps, crackers, and juice. Did my grandma cater the reward this year, this episode? What is that? Goodness. But was happy to see David go. I was getting a little annoyed with the Honesty Integrity Alliance, so that was good. Camilla, my USB is still there. If I had to say who's going to win right now, I'm definitely leaning towards Kyle, but we'll see. definitely excited to see what happens next week, and really excited to hear what everyone else thought about the episode, because usually whenever it's one where I'm down on it early on in the episode, I might have been missing something. And so I'm hoping to hear maybe what I missed and maybe some of the fun that I wasn't paying close enough attention to from the other superfans.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. Congrats on getting all those vote out points. Good job.
That's awesome.
Next up, got an email from Becca in South Carolina.
Hi, Joanne and Stacy. Hi, Survivor fans. Whether Milk has an official advertising deal with Survivor this season or not, the messaging is working on me. I stopped at the grocery store for just 2 things the other day and left with one unplanned item, chocolate milk. I know that Liam and Caroline would gladly take a page out of David's book and drink the whole gallon in a day, so I created a hiding place for it in the back corner of the fridge and forgot about it until we sat down to watch Survivor. Hopefully there was a nice glass of milk waiting for David when he arrived at Ponderosa. 2 amazing things happened this week. 1, I remembered to enter our JSFL picks. And
amazing.
2, we got full points.
Amazing.
The episode had me a little nervous because I think every person we had put as safe came up in the vote out discussions.
Yep.
Half of us would have stopped at the safety without power like Eva did. 1 would just have kept the extra vote, and the other said most gamblers quit right before they hit it big and would have gone for it. David was more perceptive than anyone would have guessed. I'm sure he's enjoyed a few I told you so moments. Once again, I'm pushing the time limit on getting my feedback in, so I have to wrap up. We think Mary will be next out. All right. Thanks, Becca. Up next, we have a call from Johnny.
Hey, Joanne and Stacy. This is Johnny calling from Wisconsin. This episode was not my favorite from the season, maybe my least favorite from the season, only because you had to try to fill an hour and a half with, in my eyes, not a whole lot of content to work with. There was very little drama at camp. It seemed you only had 2 viable options in just Mitch or David. I'm surprised they actually got off of the Mary train. I think if David had won immunity, I think Mary was gone. Instead, she received no votes, which is awesome as somebody rooting for her for win the whole thing. But yeah, it still kind of makes me nervous because next episode, it looks like Kyle and Camilla will be able to control the whole thing. They'll have all the information, one person in one side, the other person on the other side, and they can pretty much decide whoever they want to send home, whether it be Joe, who I think is most likely to go home next, or they could flip it to Mary. It doesn't seem like they ever wanted to work with Mary, so maybe they send her home now. Probably one of those 2 I'm thinking is in danger. As for what David contributed, I'm not really sure. He looked like a jury member to me the whole way, but not in the way he went about it. It's really strange, actually. It almost reminded me more of a game of like Q we saw from a couple seasons ago, or if you remember all the way back to David versus Goliath, Carl, the truck driver that got put to Exile Island. That guy seemed to have a really strong opinion, too, that he just wouldn't budge. It seems that characters who have this really hard-headedness to them and stubbornness get voted off in the early merge stage because they just are impossible to work with going forward, and they don't want anyone else making those decisions for them. So that's really too bad. Oh well, at least he'll be somewhat entertaining on the jury. I'm also really interested to watch next episode how Mitch can bounce back. Hopefully he'll get a little fuel and see that he is part of a half of the alliance of 4. That would be wonderful because really, I'm surprised. He still has 9 more days, but he looks like he's on his absolute last leg out there. Poor guy. Hopefully this, like I said, a little motivation here. He'd be able to get in line with a good vote and hopefully raise his spirits a little bit because it's really too bad watching him just suffer like this, but that's part of the game. Very much looking forward to this Elite 8 that's left and hearing all the feedback from you guys every week. It's awesome sauce. Have a good one.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, I think Mitch could make a turn. He got fed, and he certainly dodged that vote. So Shahin will be comforting him after this last tribal council, the way he went to comfort Shahin after the Chrissy vote.
Well, and, Mitch was original Siva with Camilla and Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
So even those 4 could have a good alliance, and I'm certain that Mary or Star would jump on board with that and go after Eva or Joe.
Yep, very much so.
Why not?
Yeah. Thanks, Johnny. Next up, we got a call from Justin.
Hey, Joanne and Stacy and all the Survivor super fans. This is Justin from Michigan. So I really enjoyed this episode. Probably had a little something to do with the fact I finally got a vote off point for David after a few weeks of a dry spell. But a few things I want to touch on. Would Shahin been allowed to follow Eva, openly or secretly, or since the note said she had to sneak off when everyone was sleeping, would she lose that opportunity for the advantage if he had followed her? So I'm just not clear on that. I'm curious if you guys have your thoughts on that. And then I saw some discourse and discussion online that an extra vote is actually better than safety without power. So I definitely disagree with this from a self-preservation standpoint. Just to get farther in the game, safety without power plus an idol is 2 tribal councils that you're safe, guaranteed. Whereas an extra vote, yes, you have more influence on the vote, and you can use the extra vote and the idol together if you want, but that idol is the only thing keeping you safe, and then the next tribal council you have nothing. So I still think safety without power is better. Yes, it's more harmful to your alliance because you won't have a vote. So if they're counting on you as a number, it's only helping you and not your whole alliance. But to me, self-preservation, getting farther in the game, that's better than the extra vote. I also didn't draw the connection with Kyle and his story to the David situation or the conflict. It just kind of makes me wonder if this is just to further Kyle's story, give him more depth as a potential winner. So I'm starting to lean towards Kyle might be final 3. And then in the next time on, it kind of alluded to a 4v4. So are they saying Star, Mitch, Mary, Camilla versus Joe, Eva, Kyle, Shahin? Because that just seems like Joe and Eva would be on the outs, because Kyle and Shahin are close to Camilla. So it's making me think, okay, if Joe or Eva don't win immunity, I definitely think they're targeting Joe. So if Eva wins immunity, I can see her giving the idol or the safety without power if it's allowed to give to somebody. I can see her giving one of those to Joe, and then she's safe with her individual immunity. If Joe wins it, obviously, if Eva gets any indication that they're going to target her, she just uses the safety without power. She can use the idol later than the safety without power. So it really hinges on those 2 winning. If neither of them win, then I can definitely see them being targeted, and then it will be up to Eva to use the idol and the advantage to save them both if they actually see it coming. So these first 3 jury members are very interesting with who is all left in the game. They all 3 seem to view the game differently, and I think they'll value different things to determine a winner. So it makes me think everyone has a chance to earn at least a vote at a final tribal, just because the way that David views things, the way that Chrissy views things, the way that Cedric views things, I don't think they're all going to come to the same conclusion with any of this remaining group. So that will make things interesting, that I don't think this jury, no matter who is in the jury and who's in the final 3 going forward, I just don't see this jury being a unanimous jury. I don't think anybody's played a strong enough game to earn that unanimous winner vote at the end. I think it's going to be split. So this is going to be a very interesting stretch, and I'm looking forward to what everyone else has to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. I don't know. I don't think it would have blown up Eva's advantage if Shahin had followed. It basically told her that she needed to sneak out. It didn't say how successful she needed to be at sneaking. So I don't think there was explicit criteria there. So
she said be willing to do it, I think.
Yeah, had to make the attempt. Yeah.
Well, also, I think it would be interesting if Kyle and Camilla were at the end and exposed their, game-long alliance. I think, people might look at things differently and who could sell it better, Camilla or Kyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would certainly be an interesting twist. Yeah.
That they had been, unless I
think Kyle was taking.
Gets outed.
Yeah, I think Kyle was taking more risk during this part of the game than Camilla was.
Yes.
So.
Yes, but he really was counting on her support and her feedback.
Mm-hmm.
To do the things he was doing. But yeah, he definitely put himself out there way more so far.
You could argue how successful he was, because David was certainly onto him. But yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Justin. Next up, we got an email from Josh the Plush Moose from Massachusetts. Dear Joanne and Stacy, I was left feeling kind of meh by the end of this episode. Not even a big dose of deceptive editing could add enough suspense to hide the fact that David was talking his way onto the jury. Here's my other observations. There's a right way, a wrong way, and David's way. Unfortunately for David, the last two match. Joe started a fire when they returned from the Chrissy vote. Foreshadowing for Final Four? Could be. Wouldn't want to go up against that. David told Camilla he floated her name, so she sank his game. Nice. It didn't take long for the Milk Alliance to curdle and sour. If a future season is called Survivor Olympics, who would join Joe, David, and Eva on the cast? Well, certainly Jonathan, because as much as David is, I don't think he's even half a Jonathan from what we saw in terms of like Jonathan's ability to literally put his tribe on his back and carry him through a challenge.
Who was it that did the hamstring that served him so well?
Charlie.
Yeah.
I don't know if he... I was thinking more along the lines of Hunter in that group of people, but it would be interesting.
Plenty of room for him too.
Yeah. Charlie doesn't have that overly physical physique. He was just smart in how he prepared.
Like Mike Holloway.
Yeah, Holloway would certainly be in a challenge Olympics. Like Yoko Ono with the Fab Four, Mary divided the Strong Six. At least she didn't try to sing. Actually, Mary can sing really well. David is a one-tool player. Apparently, that tool's a bulldozer. Eva, just because you want your friends to be friends doesn't mean they will be. Jeff's British accent is almost as bad as the Geico geckos. Yeah, I forgot he did that. I think I blanked it out, but he did do that again, didn't he? When they were coming in for the challenge. David's right. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. I loved Eva's advantage trade-up game. Risk a newly won trinket, not your vote. David has a one-track mind. Did he do too many stunts without a helmet? Joe and Shahin moved like a bearded wombat. Joe said Shahin moved like a bearded wombat. Do they have wombats at the firehouse? When the night vision turned to color during Eva's trek, I expected a yellow brick road to appear. It was a stark contrast. Joe's cuss phrase, God dog, is a palindrome. Indeed it is. Sharp. Eva, it's not a secret advantage if you immediately tell everyone about it. Kyle is social, Camilla's strategic. They should call their duo the Yin-Yang Alliance. My brain exploded when the parchment said safety without power gives you power in the game. David could blow up Kyle's game. Now we know what kinds of stunts he does. Today's programmed activities at the Merge Beach included swimming lessons. David says that Joe went back on his word. David, Joe has a word for you. Blindside. Kyle really hated schoolwork. Most folks don't need to be locked up to get them to study. Eva seeks to bridge the gap in the six. Just don't become the Tacoma Narrows Bridge and shake apart. Wow, what a nice reference. A nice engineering reference for Eva there. I love the steampunk contraptions the art department builds for challenges. Did they cater the food reward from random leftovers at production's cafeteria? There you go. I think so. More cost savings. We'll feed them what we're eating back at camp. David said he had plenty left in the tank, but he wound up tanking his own game. Jeff said one small mistake can snuff your torch, but so can several bigger ones. Kyle says Mary and David look like very close friends. David has a new girlfriend. Did he find a no showmance with Mary? Shahin planted seeds for 5 days. Is that how long it takes for Russell seeds to sprout? I think we got it. Yeah. Camilla implied she'd do better on a season with flabby weirdos. So would I. Me too. Shahin don't wanna his way out of the game. When David knocked on wood, he sounded like a really big woodpecker. Eva doesn't have a good poker face. She looked absolutely miserable while Jeff read the votes. David walked off as the strong, silent type. Too bad he didn't play that way. Yeah, really. Next time, Mary, Camilla, and Star need to find a way forward. It's a whole new revolution. 4 versus 4 is a critical mass. No one will ever know, and big people get eaten by piranhas. Will the fabled Women's Alliance supplant the Strong Six? Ooh, I didn't even see it that way. I guess that's a possibility. Anyway, that's it for me for now. Thanks, Joanne and Stacy, for all you do. I can't wait to hear what the other fans have to say. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks, Josh. Good job, buddy.
Well, it would still be 4-4, and there is no way Eva would put herself in a women's alliance.
No, she doesn't get along with other women as self-described, does not seek them out.
No, and, she's drawn to more physically active males.
Mm-hmm.
That's just her wheelhouse.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Josh. Next up, we got a call from Jeremiah.
Hello, Survivor friends. This is Jeremiah here with some feedback for episode 9 of season 48, where King David has gone down. Obviously, he's definitely not a king, although in his head he probably thinks he is. I will admit, I did not see the strong alliance turning on themselves so quickly, but when you look at how things transpired during the episode and basically David kind of buried himself, you can definitely see how it happened. The episode made it look like his comment to Joe about going back on his word might have been the nail in the coffin. Granted, of course, on David's exit interviews, he's trying to say that Joe did go back on his word. Who knows what to believe? Personally, I think in the end, what this episode told me was that Kyle is way better at convincing people than David is. Kyle and Camilla have continued to show us what great players they are. Now we're getting mostly Kyle's side of things, and that's mainly because he is in the position between everyone. But I really like watching these two work. I do want to go on the record, by the way, of saying I'm with you all on all the comments about trying to play with integrity and all that stuff. We've all been watching this game long enough, and we know that anytime players try to play with that type of attitude, it's just never going to work out. Now, in this episode, we got to watch Eva get this advantage, and I do think she, of course, played it very well. I would have taken the 50-50 shot, but not the 33% shot. And especially it made it easier for her because she already had a full-blown idol. But I did want to talk a second about the safety without power. Now, on the positive side for someone like Eva, because she does have an idol, it could be very useful for her and Joe if they're in serious trouble, because she could give Joe the idol and then take the safety without power or vice versa and get them both out of a jam. The only negative about the safety without power, of course, is the fact that you do not have a vote. And that can be very damaging if you walk out of tribal and not there to help your alliance. Which makes me wonder, do you think that we'll ever see an opportunity where someone could utilize that knowledge to maybe convince someone to leave tribal council and use it when they didn't need to, and in that way you could take over the advantage in numbers on a vote? I could see smart players like Kyle and Camilla coming up with a plan to utilize something like that. What do you all think? Well, overall, this was a really good episode. I thought it was a positive episode for Shahin as well. I kind of was writing him out of chances to win, but now maybe he's back in. Although my top picks are still Kyle, Joe, or Eva. As for next week's concern, I am not really buying that they're going to go after Joe and Eva. I think it's probably going to be like a Star or a Mary or even maybe Mitch going home, but maybe I'm wrong. All right, you all take care. Until next time, this is Jeremiah from Southern California.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Well, here's what I think they're going to do is that they'll probably work Kyle and maybe even Shahin, work with the other four. And
who's the other four?
Everyone except Joe and Eva.
Okay.
And that they will let it be known that they're targeting them, and they won't know which one, to flush out the idol and the her advantage, and then they'll send somebody else home. Whoever Joe and Eva decide on, maybe. I don't know how they'll work that, but I think they're going to try to flush at least an idol, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And that way they can kind of, because they don't really care if Mary goes home, and maybe even Star.
But you were talking about enlisting her as part of it?
Yes.
And then
bringing
voting her out?
On it, but they might also talk with Eva and Joe and say, let's vote for Mary, so that they know they won't put their names down. And then they blindside them. Well, no, if they blindside them, they'll go home.
I thought your premise was that they got out.
Yeah, the premise was, well, maybe
you talk yourself in a circle.
Well, I hadn't worked it all out yet. It was on the spur of the moment.
Uh-huh. What did you think about Jeremiah's question?
But they'll figure it out.
Okay, punt.
Jeremiah's question?
Yeah, he asked, do you think we'll ever see someone use the safety without power strategically to get someone out so they can't vote? Basically, to take a piece off the board so you can get a desired outcome. Under the right circumstances,
Yes,
I think
under the
that's
right
possible. I think
circumstances,
we've even...
yes.
That seems vaguely familiar, like that's even come up as a possibility before.
Or has it been done? Sounds familiar. But I don't know. But it would be a good play if they knew where the numbers were going and they
You have to have a lot of
that.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of
Send them
knowledge
out.
and confidence in how you think things are going.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly a possibility, and it's certainly a next level kind of play.
Yeah, it is.
Might see it one day because it seems like the gameplay is elevating. Certainly Rachel last season demonstrated that multiple
Awesome,
times.
Rachel,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it would be a perfect way to get numbers on your side.
Yeah, to take a piece off the board, basically, so you could get the desired outcome. But you
And
would,
sometimes that's all you need. It's just that little bit.
yeah, that one pivot to seize control.
Yep.
Good stuff. Thanks, Jeremiah. Next up, we got a call from Jen.
Hi, everyone. This is Jen in California, and here are my thoughts on Survivor 48, Episode 9. Back at camp, Shahin is our narrator, but he doesn't seem to be narrating the same game that we're watching. David is on to Kyle, and I found myself hoping that he would bring the Kyle and Camilla relationship into the light. Alas, that didn't happen. But Kyle is realizing that he has to start playing hard. He can't just kind of sit around being quasi-invisible in the middle anymore. I think that Shahin should have tried to follow Eva in the middle of the night instead of alerting Joe. Kind of the way Rachel did last season, where she hid in the bushes while others sat and strategized, and they did not know that she was listening. But his worrying was all for nothing because Eva ended up telling the three guys all about her advantage. And I'm not sure if that was the right thing to do, but she definitely bought some goodwill with Shahin. Joe was so triggered by David telling him that he went back on his word. I mean, that wasn't the best move on the part of David. He could have gone a little easier on Joe in order to preserve that relationship. But at the same time, I find it very hard to believe that Joe has kept his word with everybody out there on that beach. Survivor is a game of deceit, and everybody breaks their word at some point. But Joe's brain just shut down when he was told that he wasn't a man of his word. I feel like this season there are a lot of players who feel like they're above the fray and honorable. Sure, not keeping your word is one way to be dishonorable, but being manipulative is another way to not be honorable. And Joe is certainly guilty of that. In one breath, he says he's honorable and a man of his word, and then he immediately proceeds to deceive Eva and manipulate her to make her distrust David and Mary. And she likes David and Mary. So, Joe, he who lives in a glass house should not cast stones. My feedback today is revealing that I'm not much of a Joe fan, but I just think that there's something off with him. Like, for instance, his comment to Mitch when he chose him for the reward. Jeff asks him if it's strategic or just like a human thing to choose Mitch, and Joe responds by saying that it's not strategic, it's just a human-to-human thing. That's fine, but what he said next is what fell flat for me. The full quotation was something like, "It's not strategic, it's just human-to-human, that's all it is." I don't know, if I were Mitch, I would be a little bit offended at that. Kind of like, he's not worth strategizing with. Kyle thinks that David and Mary have something more than friendship, and that's interesting. And finally, if Kyle and Camilla can succeed with this, two individuals each playing different sides but secretly strategizing together, I'll be impressed. I mean, it's definitely a dangerous game to play, but could be very effective as long as they can stay under the radar. We'll see if they can keep it up. The kind of game they're playing is kind of what I always thought would be the game that I would play if I were out there, and I think it's exciting to watch, and it'll be very exciting if it actually succeeds. Anyway, that's it for me. I can't wait to hear everyone else's thoughts. Till next week.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, I kind of took it that, everybody kind of understood why he took Mitch, because he said Mitch was having a lot of trouble that day, that he's the only one that had nothing.
No reward.
No reward, no food, nothing.
Out of all of them, yeah.
Out of all of them. And so everyone was aware that Mitch was really struggling. So I'm not sure anyone might not have taken him, even David.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they thought.
Oh, no, I don't think David would have taken him.
You don't think David would?
No.
Okay, well, anyway, I do think that was why Joe. Now, Shahin, I'm not sure, other than, like I said, kind of David is what that felt like to me, to take Shahin on the...
Oh, instead of David. Got you, yeah.
Yeah, because David expected him to take.
Yeah, he had said he would take Joe, so how dare you.
And like I said, I think that's exactly why Joe didn't take him.
You want to teach that young punk a lesson.
Yeah, he took, Shahin and Eva, right?
And Mitch, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, so I'm sure that kind of hurt. But it is what it is.
And who called the hit at that reward?
Called the hit?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mitch didn't he?
That's right. 1,000% David. My guy Mitch nailed it.
Well, I agreed with him 100%. It's like David is the biggest threat out there. He's more than proved it. And why would you not take out the biggest threat? Even if he is in your alliance, you can do without him.
See, but you don't think with honesty and integrity like David does.
No. Not in
you
the
want to
game
win.
of Survivor.
You want to win.
Well, otherwise I wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
If I don't want to win, if I'm not going to do it for my family,
right,
then why would I even bother? I stay here with my family. Sure wouldn't be out there.
But you could be your authentic self and speak your mind and expect to be respected and rewarded
I would
for
do
that.
Anyway, and they could take it as they chose.
Oh, okay. Well, then you're essentially throwing your game away, just like everybody
I
else who
do that.
shoots to be their authentic self and demands to be.
I would temper it with whatever my goal was.
That's different. That's different than what you said.
Doesn't mean I wouldn't speak my mind in confessionals.
That's completely different.
It's not for what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't hear that qualification.
You put your own interpretation.
I see. Yeah.
On my word.
Well, there is a group of players, and they do make for good TV moments that vow to always speak their mind, and I think that is part of why they are cast, because they will bring that irrational behavior. They'll choose to share what they share, and if they can't be valued for that, well, then they might as well not be playing, I guess.
Yeah, I was surprised to have multiple people that were very into the absolute honesty and integrity in the game. And
well, there's that, but basically Chrissy and David are all in that category, and you see where they are. So they can make for great TV moments if that's what you want, but then that's not necessarily the recipe. It's a very difficult recipe to pull off to be a winner.
I would even go so far as to say impossible. If it happened, it would be more of a fluke, I think. It just happened
it is.
that
It's
way.
extremely difficult and unlikely that a group would hold together to a specific tenet. I won't completely rule it out, but because
or that any single person could play with complete honesty and integrity.
You can absolutely do that, but we won't see you at the end at Final Tribal Council.
That wasn't mine. It was to get to the end.
Oh, good stuff.
Some more than others.
I'm excited to see what happens next. It could be literally anyone's game, literally, at this point. We just don't know how it's going to play. It could be really predictable. We could still get a pagonging. There could still be a strong alliance that moves ahead. You don't know how people are going to decide what's in their best interest, obviously. But there is the potential going into this next episode to completely upset the apple cart.
True. And I think they would be smarter to go after Eva than Joe. And you know what?
Why?
Because, well, obviously you want to get rid of all the advantages she's got going.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, Joe's already said multiple times throughout the season he would give up his game for Eva.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he just won't have...
So if he thinks they're targeting her, he could, I don't know, do something. That
volunteer as tribute?
I don't know. Or tell them, vote me.
Uh-huh.
I won't let her play anything for me. Vote me out. Don't take Eva out. And then he'd give her at least three tribal councils, that one, and 2 more with her advantages. So
yeah,
she could just play them one at a time, which would get her pretty deep, into the final 5 anyway.
Yep.
So, then she'd have to fight it out from there.
On her own. Could she do it on her own?
Well, she's very physically fit. She could win challenges.
Yeah, but there are challenges that are coming that aren't about physical fitness necessarily.
True, but
and there are challenges that can
stamina.
Really test your frustration level, and we've seen that could be a trigger for her.
But not if it's stamina. Stamina she can do. And she's got several opportunities because the ones she doesn't win, she only needs to win one to get to the Final Four. Or maybe Final Three. Let's see. If that would be 3 tribals that she would be guaranteed to get through. So she would already be in the Final 5. And if she could just win one, she could get into the Final Four, maybe make fire and get into the Final 3. Yeah. So I'm just saying those things are possible.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I would target her. Even though I kept thinking it would be Joe that would leave, and it may be. But also I think it could be Mary, unless they catch on to Camilla and Kyle. If they do, I think they'll all want to target them.
So it could be the end of that hidden alliance, you're thinking. Yeah, see, we're on the precipice with all these possibilities. Really excited. Good stuff. We want to thank everybody who took the time to send in your thoughts and your predictions and share your analysis this week. We enjoyed all of it, and there was a variety of different takes on this past episode. Some liked it. There's quite a few in the meh category, and interesting to see how everybody's perceiving it. I want to say a big thanks to Pat and Hope for your donations. Thank you so much for contributing to our operational costs. We really, really appreciate your support. It goes a long way towards helping with that.
And if you're in JSFL, remember to make your Week 10 picks for one person voted out and 4 people you think will still be in the game at the end of the episode.
Again, looking forward to this next episode. We'll be back on Wednesday with a recap.
All right, have a good one.